So for a long time she was forgotten, and I think former President Thabo Mbeki mentioned her in opening the Cape Town Convention Centre in 2003, where he spoke of Maria and her children and how they came to this country in chains, overcame amazing odds, and epitomized the role models we need today in rebuilding our continent. Swart Maria was born into slavery at the Cape of Good Hope, probably around 1663. Her parents were brought to the Cape in 1658 as slaves from West Africa. Her father was Everett, her mother was Anna. Anna came from Guinea.
Swart Maria Everett was growing up in a very topsy-turvy world where she was moving about quite often. She and her mother were sold 3 times before she was 8. At the age of 8 is when her father bought her and her mother's freedom.
Maria obviously learned a lot about growing vegetables, growing crops. Her father probably grew wheat because that was one of the major requirements of the Dutch East India Company, and they certainly had vines planted too, so she would have known a little bit about wine growing.
As this observant child watches her father, Everett of Guinea, as a farmer, as a businessman, and as a person who wielded some degree of power as well, and she soaked this up.
At that stage, free blacks ostensibly had the same rights as any free citizen.
And somehow, because history is quite silent on this, somehow she built up quite a fortune. Now her coming to own Camps Bay was almost the last thing that she did in her life, because it was in the final year of her life. She owned 2 farms on the west coast, title deed.
By the time of Maria's death in 1713, during the smallpox epidemic, she was one of the wealthiest landowners at the Cape, and she did that in her own right, in her own name. Swart Maria can be seen as the mother of Constantia because both of her children ended up living here. Her son Johannes married the widow of the man who'd owned Hoop Constantia, then known as Klein Constantia, and he was the guy who really took over from Simon van der Stel in making wine. So in the 1730s, Johannes Klein, son of Swart Maria, and Johanna Klein lived and worked these farms.
The early slaves built the city. They built the farms. They built the infrastructure. They were the craftsmen. They were also the teachers. The first schools were in the slave lodge. They had so many talents. And Swart Maria Everett, she is manifest of this ability to rise against the odds. Not just rise, but excel. To become so powerful a personality that history remembers. Bump.